Hey everyone, welcome back to another Josh Wonders Why. Tonight we will be unpacking the supernatural beings of Revelation and explaining, are they real, are they fictional, are they symbolic? If you're new to this, we spent the past couple weeks talking about supernatural beings in the Bible, starting with the Old Testament, and now we're ending with the book of Revelation as part of just sort of a fun play with the Halloween season coming up. So tonight, joined with Pastor Kelly as always, and she's going to answer all of our questions and debunk.
Well, maybe not all of them, but
the creatures in Revelation. So if you're joining us and if you have questions about Revelation, anything you've always wondered about, feel free to put it in the chat. Any other questions you may have about any other supernatural beings or just anything in general, put it in the chat as well. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions you have. So before we start Revelation, I did have a question for you at home watching us and also for you. Do you like horror movies? So do you like horror movies at all?
not usually.
Not usually.
I like to read spooky stories,
Okay.
like novels, and but I don't usually like horror movies because I always think like gore. I don't like seeing gross
The gore,
stuff.
okay.
However, last year I watched the movie Get Out,
Okay, yeah.
and I mean there's a little bit of gore in it, but
Yeah.
it just the psychological aspect of it and the
So
deeper
like the psychological
meaning
thrillers?
and all that.
What sort
I
of-
really liked it.
What sort of books do you like reading? Like their stories, like do you like ghost stories? Just
Yeah,
psychological?
I'll read ghost stories. I like mysteries, and if there's some paranormal in there with it, that's fun too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're watching us, if you like horror movies or horror stories or what sort of genre.
Janae says no horror ever.
What's that? No,
No
horror
horror.
ever. You're a wimp. So
But like there are movies like Practical Magic or Hocus Pocus.
I wouldn't call those horror movies.
No,
but
they're not
maybe,
horror
yeah.
movies, but
They're
they're
fun
like
Halloween
movies.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. We just watched Hocus Pocus, I think yesterday or the day before. It's a fun movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy zombie movies. Like if it's a movie or a TV show with zombies, I will watch it. I don't know. I think I like the psychological just premise of how do humans or how do people interact when it's sort of a dire situation where the world's falling apart, there's no more hope, how do they survive, right? It's interesting to watch just the psychological of different people's takes.
I just don't like the gore.
Well, also, okay, the gore, okay. But more for the gore. So I also like it too because at the end it typically ends with a really depressing note, and watching that makes me feel sort of maybe not as depressed. I'm like, at least I'm not in their situation. So I feel better about my own life, right? So I like the
There's always
psychological,
that. It could always be worse.
So I like the psychological, but that also feeds into, we were talking about this last week, when I was taking confirmation in middle school. I was in a small group, and they went around and asked, what's your favorite part of the Bible? And most of these kids being in middle school at the time, they're like, I don't have a favorite part. One kid said, I like the maps in the back. And
Yeah.
you see like the teacher like roll his eyes. And at the time, and I still do, I found Revelation very interesting. So I mentioned that, and the teacher just like, finally someone actually knows something or has some interest in the Bible. That's not
Yeah.
the maps or the notes in the back or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed Revelation. I think it ties in maybe to the zombie, end the world apocalypse coming. Like, growing up, I always liked to maybe romanticize that Revelation was what's going to happen at the end times, right? When the apocalypse comes. I mean, Ghostbusters quotes it, and from
yeah.
Revelation 6:12, I watched as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars of the sky fell to earth, as figs dropped from fig tree when shaken by a strong wind, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
End times.
Real wrath of God stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, like before that, he asks Ray, do you believe in God? And his answer is, never met him. I always find that hilarious. So we're talking about Revelation. So it is a lot to take in. We're not going to go through the entirety of Revelation, but maybe some intro. It is believed to be written by a John. It's believed to be written by the John that wrote the book of John, the Gospel of John, is the belief. Or God's favorite disciple, however you want to call him.
The disciple Jesus loved best.
Disciple Jesus loved best. So written by that, and it goes into some visions that he saw, and he explains it over the course of Revelation. It's hard to maybe discern, are these signs of things to come, things that already happened in the past, and so on and so forth. But let's get into some of the maybe some of the supernatural stuff that happens. And the first one I want to pick on is in Revelation 11, chapter 11, there's a story about two witnesses. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but these two witnesses come back to earth to prophesy for about 1,260 days. And it says that if anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. They have the power to shut up the heavens so that it will not rain during the time. And it says, now that when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them, overpower them, and kill them, and their bodies will lie in the public square of a great city for 3.5 days. And it says, after those 3.5 days, and it says the inhabitants of earth will gloat over them, just pass them by, won't give them proper burial. But after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God enters them, and they stood up on their feet, and the terror struck those who saw them. So that sounds like a zombie to me. Those two witnesses were risen up. So maybe you can help us unpack this. These two witnesses that come, that can breathe fire out of their mouth, were killed by this beast that we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then God breathes life back into them.
Well, first of all, let me say, when you think about Revelation, John wrote it to the Christians of the time to encourage them in the face of great persecution. And they would have heard it, they would have gotten the metaphors, they would have understood. I mean, it's apocalyptic literature, which is a genre we don't use anymore, but there's a certain, just like mysteries or biographies, they follow a certain pattern, and so did apocalyptic literature. And there's a lot of metaphor in that, and the people would have gotten it.
Yeah.
They would have known what he was talking about. That doesn't mean that it's not meaningful to people today. It still is, but we just have a little harder time figuring it out.
Yeah.
And also, up until more modern times, there wasn't this idea of it being, oh, this is what's going to happen in the end times. It was, and there wasn't until the, I think, 19th century, this whole idea of millennialism and the rapture and the tribulation. All that stuff was invented by somebody in the 19th century.
Yeah.
So that has not been around since the beginning. And so that also helps us to step back and look at it in a different way and not be looking for those things that really aren't in there. So the two witnesses are, see, John refers back to Old Testament several times. He references Daniel and I don't know, Zechariah seems to have been taken out of my Bible. I can't find it.
Must have the non-Zechariah version of the Bible.
Yeah. So Zechariah writes about the witnesses. For heaven's sakes. Yeah, there it is. Okay. And so he was having a dream or a vision with an angel, and the angel wakes him up. What do you see? I answered, I see a solid gold lampstand with a bowl at the top and 7 lamps on it with 7 channels to the lamps. And see, you see 7 a lot in Revelation. Mm-hmm. Also, there are 2 olive trees by it, one on the right of the bowl and the other on its left. And so John borrows that image And so some people believe that the two witnesses are actually people, like Moses and Elijah, because
Okay.
of like the miracles they do, right? And some people believe they are two groups of people. There's always also the idea of it's a composite of the prophets, or more likely it symbolizes the prophetic role of the church.
Okay.
And so no one really knows for sure, but when they are killed and left unburied, that's like a desecration, like total disrespect to them. But they are resurrected by God and taken up into heaven.
Okay. So not
But
zombies at all.
It's they're not zombies, no, but
Yeah,
it's really kind of, nobody really can explain that.
It's just weird that they're sitting there just decomposing right on the ground,
But I
right?
would say, because I saw a lot, when I was doing research, I saw a lot of things about, I know who the two witnesses are. They're alive right now, and a lot of that. And
Yeah. And that's where
no,
that's where it's tough. Is do you take it as actual two witnesses, or two witnesses represent two groups or churches? It's not actually an individual person. It's
yeah, I think you have to take the things in Revelation as metaphors, not actual things. Because even, Jesus is represented by a lamb. And there's a reason why John is using that metaphor, but it's still a metaphor.
yeah,
We don't expect to see, when we think Jesus, we don't think lamb, literally,
yeah.
So just keep thinking metaphors.
Okay.
That's how the genre works. It's a visionary prophecy using metaphors. And it doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that it's not literal.
Okay.
So.
Well, so let's see. Janae just wrote
Yes.
in, could it relate to the Mosaic Law, which required two
Mm-hmm.
witnesses to any crime, act to prove it was true, like a way to self-validate itself? Yeah.
And so that's another part of it. He's borrowing from that, that you have to have two witnesses.
Yeah.
To make it valid. So yeah.
That makes sense. I never thought about that. That's a good point, Janae.
Yep.
So that was sort of a softball starting with two witnesses. Now let's get into some of the more fun supernatural stuff. So chapter 12 starts off, the title called The Woman and the Dragon. So I don't know how you can refute an actual dragon. We'll find out though. So I'll just read the first 4 verses. So it said, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, that's S-U-N, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. So we'll start. So that dragon,
So
what can you tell us about that?
The dragon is a metaphor for Satan,
okay?
who tried to devour the child who is the Messiah.
Okay. So is this talking about the second coming or the...
The woman represents Israel or the people of God.
Okay.
So, and it's not, okay, this is what happened or this is going to happen. It's a metaphor. It's a vision.
Okay.
So when, it just shows how Satan tried to defeat Christ, tried to devour Christ, thought that he had defeated Christ when Christ died, but he fails.
Okay.
So I don't know that you can really read a whole lot more into that. It's just...
So we would take it as I guess with the symbolism.
Yeah.
Is it a dragon as we consider dragons now, or is it more like a a serpent like the imagery from Genesis with that serpent, right? Do we take it as a dragon with wings and, like the dragon from Shrek or some other, or do we take it as an actual like snake or a serpent? Because that's, what would have John thought at the time? Was he aware of how we have pictured dragons since the medieval era, or was his vision of a dragon different than ours?
I don't know. I think a dragon is also, isn't Leviathan also a dragon?
Yeah.
So, maybe that's what he's thinking.
If only you could ask John. Where's your phone? Let's phone up John and ask him.
Let's
phone
a friend and ask. Yeah, so I think it's just like what you read there.
Okay.
It's a dragon. Red. The red dragon. And 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns. I mean, you keep seeing 7.
So what gets me? So the engineer in me gets tied up in the details, trying to figure out. There are 7 heads. Does each head have 10 horns, or are there 10 horns to go around with the 7 heads? Because that's not even split. So which heads have 2 horns? Which heads have 1 horn? Right.
Well, maybe it's 7 heads and 10 horns.
On each head?
No. Just
horns.
on the dragon. Maybe the dragon has 10 heads, and then there
are 7
heads, and then there are 10 horns somewhere else. Like maybe that's what's on its back. I don't know. Does it really matter?
It does to me, because I'd like to understand this when I'm reading this. At least the 7 crowns line up with the 7 heads, and they're not a head missing a crown, so that's good.
So. Yeah.
So okay, so that represents Satan. So I guess when the end times come, though, is Satan gonna appear as a serpent or a dragon?
Well, see, this isn't about the end times.
Well, we can debate that.
So my position is going to be that this does not tell us what is going to happen at the end. It is telling us, it's just telling us about what's going to happen to Satan, I guess, or what has already happened to Satan. So, if you read on, it tells you how, Jesus has taken control, and
the next one we'll get to, so there's another beast that comes out. So in the next chapter 13, chapter 12 talks about how Satan is defeated and can't get to the woman or the child, and ends with the dragon standing on a. We're going to add something.
I was just going to say, then the dragon was enraged at the woman
and
went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus. So, it's just making the point that we are still in a fallen state. We are still dealing with evil.
Yep. So then it starts next chapter, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns. Now this I'll get to because I'm trying to understand that. And on each head a blasphemous name. It had the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. Sorry, excuse me. So anyways, that one is entering the imagery with a beast that looks like a leopard, had feet of a bear and a mouth like a lion.
Where have you heard that before?
I don't know, where?
Because we just talked about it 2 weeks ago.
I was wondering.
Daniel.
Yes.
Yeah. He borrows from Daniel now. It's kind of a similar beast.
Yep.
Yeah. Except Daniel, I guess, had 4 separate ones, but still, when Daniel interpreted the vision, he said that each one represented a different empire.
Yeah.
So the beast out of the sea, it represents politics and empire, and it demands allegiance to and the worship of, meaning bowing down to, the empire.
Okay.
And it wages war against Christians like the Roman Empire did at that time. That's what was happening. And so that made perfect sense to the Christians.
Okay. There are some, I've been reading about this, believe that this chapter is talking about the Antichrist that is to come as well.
Okay. So let's just clear up the whole Antichrist
Let's
thing.
go for it.
Because the word Antichrist is not in Revelation anywhere. The word Antichrist is not a title. There is not the Antichrist. An Antichrist is what it says. Anyone who is against Christ or against Jesus. Anyone, any system, any empire that is working and acting against Jesus. And in 1 John 4 and 2 John 7, he talks about there are many antichrists even right now. So it's, and please, people on YouTube, stop trying to tell everybody who the Antichrist is. It's like, I am going to reveal the Antichrist to you, and he's already here. You know, that's not what it means.
But it's interesting, though, because you take it, and it's anything that's against Christ or against Christianity. You could say, like, the politics or the politicians or rulers at the time, and that group, any group that's against Christianity could be considered an Antichrist or anti-Christian in a way, right?
And so people think that he's referring to Nero, and we'll get to that. But it could, you know, it can be Nero. It can be any Caesar, any king, any system that is against Jesus. That's an Antichrist.
Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, we
Consider that, yeah.
we can do things that are Antichrist too. So.
Okay, we got that beast. One more beast to talk about. Still in chapter 13, now verse 11, it talks about another beast that comes out of the earth. And John says, "Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. And it exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast." So, this one's interesting as well. What does this represent
This
then?
one represents false religion and deception.
Okay.
Because it comes looking like a lamb, but then it reveals its true nature when it speaks. And it is forcing the people to worship the empire, to worship power. And so John is warning the people about false teachings in the church.
Okay. And that would have made perfect sense to them at the time. They would have understood that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, that it goes on then, after that, it talks about then, this, let's see, where is it? This beast also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The number is 666. So let's unpack that for a while, because I've always, I guess,
talk about that.
It's interesting because I've never been very superstitious about that, but I know people that I've come across that as, like, I think I was at a restaurant sometime and I placed an order, like a fast food restaurant, and the number came up to 666, and the person behind the register would not say the number. Said, "Oh, your amount is that. I'm not going to say it." I'm like, "Really? Are we going to be superstitious?" So interesting, I guess.
Aww.
So 666. What's the significance of that number?
So Hebrew didn't have numbers, so it assigned numbers to letters. So if you in Hebrew, the full name of Nero, like Nero Caesar, equaled 666. Now, the interesting thing is, some ancient manuscripts have the number as 616.
Okay.
Because in the Greek, the full name of Caesar added up to 616.
So are they the location in their alphabet? That's the number that they're assigned, or how do you know how they calculate that?
It's like the letters in the name each have a numerical value.
Yeah, but is it the order that they come in the alphabet?
I don't remember.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I don't know that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's math. I guess I don't expect you to know that, right?
That's right. Exactly. It's math. I don't like math.
I should have. I
You
should have
should
prepared
have
for that.
figured
My
that,
fault.
yeah.
That's my fault. Okay.
So, but the beast represents all empires, not just Nero. And so it's just, we make too much out of that.
So what does it
It
mean though? With
yeah.
I guess with unless you had the mark, you could not buy or sell. How does that relate back to Nero? So it said they couldn't buy or sell unless they had the mark.
Well,
Is that
I don't
just
think it.
If they,
I don't
if
think
they
it
praise Nero or if they
I don't think
worship
it
him.
necessarily means, like Nero, because I think when this was written, it was past Nero's time.
Okay.
But Nero was particularly evil.
Yeah.
Towards Christians. And there's a whole lot of other symbolism with Nero. And I mean, in real life, he committed suicide, and that was really bad for Caesar.
Yeah.
And, so they made up this thing about, well, he's not really dead. He's just hidden for a while, but he's going to come back, and, and gets that all mixed up with divinity and all that. But, so the mark, it doesn't say that the mark is going to be 666.
Well, it says, it says.
They have to have a mark.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not
Okay.
related to 666.
So, well, it says, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name.
Yeah.
So this goes back to the second beast is forcing people to worship the first beast, which is the empire. So the second beast then is making people take this mark in order to buy and sell and get along in society. Now, what's interesting is I heard one person describe it as the anti-Shema.
Yes.
That is from Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, this is the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. So if the beast is going to make people take a sign, a symbol, that you worship the empire,
Yeah.
that's the opposite of the people being told to, symbolically tie these things on your forehead and your hand, to remind yourself of these commandments. And, specifically, the Lord is one, which is the opposite of the empire.
Okay.
That, you're to bow down to the empire. So this also, it reminds me that in the 3rd and 4th centuries, Christians would be, so the Caesar at the time, the emperor, was like, okay, things aren't going well. I think it's because the gods are angry. And they're probably angry because we have this group of people who won't sacrifice to them.
Yeah.
Because they're following this Jesus person. And so from now on, everybody has to sacrifice to the gods.
Yeah.
And so, but if, so you had to make a sacrifice, and you would get a certificate for doing that. And then that certificate would, kind of be your papers to do business.
Okay.
And get along in the world. And so if you would not make a sacrifice, you would likely be arrested and maybe killed. But at the very least, you weren't going to be able to get along in society. And so it's kind of the same thing here. If you don't have this mark, you're not going to be able to do business. people aren't going to want to be around you. They're not going to help you. So it's kind of that thing. But
Okay,
I
that's
think
interesting.
people really put too much emphasis on this number, like it's got some magical powers. That's what bothers me, is like, this is a number, and it could be 616, but people are so attached to 666 that that's what it says in our Bibles.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have magical powers. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a numerical, form of the name Nero.
Yeah. All those sevens considered lucky, right? 777s are lucky. So 666s.
Well,
also
7 was equated completion, because God completed the creation and rested on the seventh day. So 7 is good. It's rest, it's completion, and 6 is not, because you're still working. So it's work, work, work. And there's also this I found interesting. This ties back to King Solomon, David's son, and it says that he would bring in annually 666 talents of gold. But the way he got his riches was on the backs of slaves. So the fact that he was bringing in 666 talents of gold every year on the backs of people, ties in with, that's what the empire does. The empire becomes greater and more wealthy on the backs of other people, of the poor and the powerless.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Well, that's really cool. So I think you've successfully debunked Revelation. It is so to summarize, I guess growing up I always found it interesting, because I guess I like the psychological thrillers of zombie movies, and I thought, hey, here's a biblical account of the apocalypse, right? Minus zombies, but reading it in present day times, thinking this is the end times, it does drive a little anxiety and, this is going to be fun when this happens. But it's interesting that you said, counter that, when it was written at the time, Christians were being persecuted, and this was meant to give them hope,
right.
which is a different mindset than I have reading it now, and my not being persecuted, saying this is what's going to come. I don't know if I want to live to see this, right?
And I think what's interesting is he tells this story 3 times in 3 different ways.
Okay.
So it's not like a progression of, and the 4 horsemen, and then we have the 7 seals, and then we have the 7 trumpets. No, it's like retelling it 3 times in different ways. And what he does is he gets you, it's like a horror movie, it builds and it builds, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awful.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, and I can't stand it. And then he'll flip it and go, but that's why Jesus came to give himself, and it's this self-sacrificial love that is going to overcome evil, because you can't overcome evil with evil. So trying to fight our enemies, trying to get the upper hand with enemies, all that kind of stuff, that's just evil, making evil.
Yeah.
And, so John's point is, we have to get to the place of self-sacrifice. We have to get to the place of humility and loving our neighbor so much that we can let them be first. We can let them have what they need. And, a lot of it is, it's very much focusing on the empire does it this way, and it's killing people.
Yeah.
It's literally killing people because, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and people are being used like pawns, and until we stop that mindset, we'll never have peace.
I was going to make another point, but I can't find it in this. So I think we'll just stop there. Yes,
Janae, Revelation 21. Yep. Yeah.
What?
And there are these wonderful passages of hope. And it's like there's one place where it says, there's, what is it, 144,000.
Yeah, Jewish.
And then, and then the next act, everybody from every nation, it's like, oh, well, that's not what we thought. We thought we were special, but no, it's everyone.
Isn't that what we're gonna go on a tangent, but I guess this is for another time. I read there are some, what is it? I'm gonna get the phrase wrong. There's a population of Christians that believe that, I'm not going to get it wrong, so I'm not going to say anything right now.
There's the elect.
I don't know if that was what I was thinking of.
And so
I'll do some more research and
ask
that question some other time.
One Protestant group thought that you're either in or you're out, like God's already made a decision.
Yeah.
And so no matter how good you are, if you're not on the list, you don't get in.
Yeah.
And then there is the thought of, well, there's 144,000 people who get in, and if you're lucky, you might, get on a lower level or something. So there's that. But yeah, in chapter 7, it talks about the 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel, and then it says, yes, the ones that are sealed. And I heard the number of those who were sealed. And then it says, after this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. So, surprise!
Yeah.
Yeah, and then chapter 21 is then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people read Revelation as escapism. And that was the Gnostics. Their whole point was, we got to get out of this world and out of this body. That's our goal.
Yeah.
And we hate women. That was the other thing. And, so Revelation is not about getting out of earth into heaven. It's about heaven coming down to earth.
Yeah.
And I think, so God.
And that goes back to the point you were saying with, until we learn to put others first, right, and have more of a welcoming place, heaven will not come down to earth in a way,
well,
right?
I don't know about that, but,
okay.
This whole idea that the world is going to be blown to smithereens and, and then God's going to start over, that's not what it says.
Okay.
That's not, because the whole point is, God is not a God of vengeance. God is not a destroyer. God is a creator and a healer. Mm-hmm. So God's going to take care of all creation, and then God is going to come here. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. He will wipe every tear from their eye. No more death or mourning or crying or pain. Yep.
Right then there, but I do like, Janae had a comment saying Jehovah's Witnesses love that 144,000 it's a whole doomsday pick-me thing. They forget to read the whole every nation, every people, all persons part. 1 out of 10 don't recommend. Yeah. That's hilarious.
I wasn't gonna name the
that's
group,
fine.
But
someone brought it up in the comments.
She can name them, but that's where.
So interesting. I'll have to look at Revelation with a whole new light. I think it may be interesting to have this as a topic going forward. Maybe to dive into it.
Well, I might do a sermon series.
Could dig deep into
Yeah,
Revelation.
we can dig deep into Revelation.
Well, appreciate you educating us on the symbolism of Revelation and setting us straight that it may be supernatural in the symbolism, but it's not maybe to be taken literally.
Yeah,
That dragons will not come down from
I think
earth.
we can all kind of relax and
Okay.
because the rapture, the tribulation, all that, that's not in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening. That's just not biblical.
Yeah. It's fun to ponder, though. Is what ifs. Maybe not
Well,
for you. It's fun for me to
I would
ponder.
rather avoid any tribulation or, all that kind of stuff. So.
Sure.
And there's one of the verses that people think of when they think of rapture is one will be taken and one will be left, and two women will be grinding flour and one will be taken and one will be left. And I remember somebody commenting on that scripture and saying, what if it's the one that's left that's the lucky one?
Interesting.
We always assume,
Yeah.
you're going to get plucked up and taken to heaven, and lucky you, and the people that are left, well, sucks to be them. But what if it's the other way around? Because, it's not about us getting out of here and going to heaven. It's about heaven coming down here.
Yeah.
Something else to think about.
It's interesting. So thanks again for helping us understand this. Thanks again for all of you watching and sticking around and for providing all the comments. Looking forward, next Monday we will not be here. I'll be out of town, so we'll be taking a week off for Josh Wonders Why. But the following Monday, which I believe is the 28th, we'll be doing a special candy tasting edition and focused on Kit Kats. So I went out and found some interesting flavors from around the world. I'll just give you a taste of some of them. Now, some of them are pretty tame, like there is chocolate orange, raspberry and chocolate, but then there's our favorite matcha. So we love the green tea, that, and then there's a milk tea. The one that I'm very interested in is there's one that is, the flavor is called whole grain flour. So curious what a whole grain flour Kit Kat tastes like.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. It'll probably be better than the matcha ones.
I don't know. Maybe we'll help balance it out. We'll do them back to back.
But see, this is our public service for you. We're going to taste these flavors and tell you if they're worth buying or not. So you're welcome.
There you go. So we'll be back in 2 Mondays to have that tasting episode, and you'll like to watch along and watch our faces as we enjoy the matcha and some of these other weird flavors that are here. But so join us in 2 Mondays. And then we'll be back again live this Thursday for a Digging Deep that you'll be leading us in. So looking forward to that. So as always, thank you for watching us and hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll see you later.
Bye.